Strange World is a strange movie with strange writing. This will be my second deep dive video, and honestly, I did not think I'd make another one. When I watch a movie, my brain will often turn off, causing a lot of metaphors to go completely over my head, and this movie was really no different. I watched Strange World while I was working on Nubia, so I was halfway paying attention, but the thing was, whenever I did stop to watch a piece of the movie, I always had something to say about what I was seeing. So that's what led me to decide to make a deep dive video. However, before talking about Strange World, I want to talk about Lightyear first. I want to kill two birds with one stone in this video. I really wasn't too sure if I wanted to watch Lightyear or not. When I watched the trailers, it just wasn't appealing to me, so I waited for the reviews. And it was interesting to see how hard of a time people were having describing the movie, which piqued my interest. So I watched it and I thought I knew where it was going. Spoiler if you haven't watched either movies. Buzz crash lands a ship of colonists on an unknown planet. As he attempts to correct his mistake, the colonist attempts to carve out a life on that planet. However, the planet is somewhat alive, I guess. There are these vines that grabs the colonist every chance it gets. When I first saw this in the beginning of the film, my brain immediately mapped out a story. I thought they were going to explore the planet in attempts to figure out why the vines were attacking them and discover that the planet is self-aware. And what they've been doing was hurting the planet and they would learn to live harmoniously with it. Does that sound familiar? This is literally what I was thinking when I watched Lightyear. But none of that happens in the movie, but guess what movie that did happen in? Which leaves me wondering, why didn't they exploit the planet's resources? Even though this is a sci-fi movie, it's pretty much impossible to survive anywhere without exploiting the resources around you, and they're marooned on that planet, so how were they able to procreate the way they did in the film without depleting their own resources that they brought with them and not tapping into the planets? I did a little research. Lightyear's theater release date was June 17, 2022. The first teaser trailer for Strange World released June 6, and the full trailer was dropped September 21st. It takes a long time to animate movies, and given how close these films were released from each other, it's safe to assume that the films were being worked on at the same time. I feel that it's not a coincidence that I thought of Strange World's plot when watching Lightyear. I don't know which film came first when it comes to concepts, but the fact that I thought of one film when watching the other does have me question how much communication is happening within the company, between departments. It's one thing when two separate studios accidentally comes up with similar concepts for films. Rio's a good example of this. But when it happens under the same roof, that's concerning. Maybe the art books better explain things, but I'm not paying $30 for a book on a film that I didn't like. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thought about this, but I don't want to watch any videos that might influence my opinion. Now that I ranted about Lightyear, let's talk about Strange World. This film was so damn condescending. One of the characters blatantly tells you the plot story less than an hour into the film. Apparently, Disney thinks children are so damn incompetent that they need to hold their hands and walk them through the entire film as if they're blind. Just to make sure you don't misunderstand anything, they go ahead and spoil the ending 53 minutes and 13 seconds into the film, leaving you 36 minutes and 17 seconds left to watch, which does not include credits. At that point, you're just waiting for the film to end. It's one thing if the audience pieces the plot together themselves with breadcrumbs that's intentionally or unintentionally given to them, but it's a totally different thing for it just to be given to them. It takes away from the suspense of wanting to know what happens next, and it ruins the experience of just losing yourself within the film. I think this quote sums up what I'm trying to say. Don't dumb it down. The audience is smart and gets what you're saying. Bruce Paltrow. Those are some of my thoughts on the film as a whole, but this is a deep dive and it's time to talk about the individual parts of the film. If you thought I talked a lot already, then buckle up because I have a lot more to say. This film tested my patience. Quick reminder, the entire film will be spoiled, so if you have not seen the movie yet and don't want to be spoiled, click off, watch it, and then come back. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into Strange World. The entire opening sequence pisses me off, but why? Let's start from the beginning. The narration makes it clear that the exploration Yeager and his team is on is specifically to find a better way of life for the citizens of Abylonia, which is a problem within itself because there's nothing wrong with their lives. They're living normal lives, so there's no reason for them to want to know what's beyond the mountains. It's just out of pure curiosity. When it advertises Yeager and his son, it's pretty clear that it's piggybacking off of Up without putting in the work. It's showing that Searcher is not enjoying himself the older he gets and starts showing other interests. And apparently that's supposed to be enough for the audience to sympathize with Searcher when it's revealed that he didn't want to be an explorer. There have been plenty of explanations on why showing is better than telling, and 90% of the time I'm right there with them, but in this case, Disney didn't do either one of those things, and what little they did show, they half-assed. When it cuts to the expedition, they go inside a cave to get to the other side, and Searcher comes across a plant that he's never seen before, and takes off his glove to inspect it even though he could have done it with his glove on. It shocks him, and he screams out in pain, causing the icicles to fall. After Jaeger saves Searcher, he could have gone off on his son, and he would have had every right to. The fact that he didn't shows how much patience this man has. Searcher endangered everyone's lives but doesn't apologize for it, and that's unfortunately a reoccurring theme in this film. When Searcher addresses a group about the plant, he talks about the electricity in it. How the f do they even know what electricity is? From what we are shown of Abylonia, we don't see them using any type of electronics. So how does Searcher know what electricity is and its potential? We get one clip of him looking at a plant, and when he picks it up, he steps in what I assume to be quicksand. His father rescues him, and Searcher drops the plant. I don't know if this scene was to hint at his father ignoring the signs of his son developing outside interest. If it is, it's a way of doing it, and I could just be overanalyzing it. When Searcher admits he doesn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, obviously it's supposed to be a big revelation, but I don't care. I have not spent the proper amount of time with this character to give a about what he wants, and what little we do see of him is him f***ing things up and doesn't apologize for it. The rest of the team sides with Searcher, obviously out of convenience to the plot, but they don't even give a reasonable argument as to why they're siding with Searcher.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I actually think Baby Clade's right.
Callisto?
Jaeger, we don't actually know what's past the mountains. But these plants here are real. We owe it to Abylonia to see what they can do.
If someone was injured or their supplies were running low, that would have made better sense for them to be eager to side with Searcher. There's a word for this. It's called taking a specimen so they could study it later, and if that specimen does have potential to benefit humanity, then an exploration team will be deployed to retrieve more of that particular specimen. Obviously, there are other things that go into this, such as finances. This is just a simplified version. This next part is what really pissed me off the most. I think I hate this scene the most in this entire movie. With everyone wanting to take the plant and go, Jaeger decides to continue the expedition by himself, and as he's walking away, Callisto and Searcher call out to him to stop.
Jaeger, come back.
Dad, wait!
Jaeger.
Dad!
You can't survive out there alone.
Dad, stop!
I know this is supposed to be a dramatic and heartbreaking scene for Searcher, but I can't help but wonder, are their legs broke? Neither one of them actually physically attempts to stop Jaeger. Using the argument, Searcher's just a kid doesn't hold much weight when looking at another Disney movie. In Treasure Planet, Jim wakes realizing his father's leaving, and instead of consoling his crying mother, he runs as fast as he can without putting any shoes on to catch up to his father, presumably to stop him from leaving, and the only thing that stops Jim from going any further is because he ran out of land. Here's another example from DreamWorks. In How to Train Your Dragon, Stoic prepares to set sail with Toothless, and Hiccup pleads with his father not to go. He even puts his hands on him, and it's only after Stoic gets aggressive with him does Hiccup back off. Searcher made no real attempt to stop his father. What gets me is that all three characters are 15 years old. They're the same age. However, I think Jim was 12 or 13 in the flashback, which does not help Searcher. 25 years pass and Searcher is now 40 and running a successful farm with his wife and son. Good for him. We're shown how they've utilized the plan to improve their lives, and so far everything seems to be perfect for Searcher. Also, I love this dog. Best damn character in the entire fucking movie. I can't help but wonder, how the hell does this work? It's a cool idea, but I don't understand the mechanics or physics behind this. I know that the engines are powered by the plants, but how is it able to stay suspended in the air without the engine on? We even get a scene where the truck is laying on the ground, probably because it's turned off. This will be addressed again at the end of the film. This reminds me of Atlantis and how they rode on those machines that hover off the ground, but only when they're turned on. The vehicles have some type of balloons on them, but given their sizes, I just don't know how plausible that would be. Now let's talk about Ethan. If you watched any Disney documentary about the Renaissance era, you'll know that every protagonist is given a I Want song. For The Little Mermaid, Part of Your World. Beauty and the Beast, Belle. Even when it's not a musical such as Raya and the Last Dragon, it's still vital to know what the protagonist wants. Raya wants to bring back her father. In Treasure Planet, Jim wants to find Flint's treasure to rebuild his mother's inn. Then there's Atlantis, where Milo wants to find Atlantis to prove his grandfather was right, that it did exist at one point. All of these intentions are made clear very early in the film, but what does Ethan want? He likes a guy, and from what we see, that guy likes him back. Great. However, when it comes to a romantic interest, it's important to see it play out throughout the story. That includes platonic friendships. Zootopia is a great example of this, along with The Fox and the Hound and Hercules. If the relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic, doesn't contribute to the story, be a conflict or solution, what's the point? Searcher comes in and does his whole awkward dad skit, and now it's time to make deliveries. The city kind of gives me Ghibli vibes, particularly the airships. I wish they had spent more time here so we could explore the city landscape. It's unfortunate that the animators create these beautiful worlds that we don't really get to see because the characters don't interact with it that much. It's also unfortunate that this is a reoccurring thing, such as with Raya and the Last Dragon and Lightyear. However, the world in Buzz Lightyear wasn't all that interesting, and I think they did that on purpose so the audience wouldn't get distracted. When I first saw the statues, I was a bit confused. Why does Jaeger have a statue? Sure, he led the expedition that brought about the discovery of the plant, but he didn't want anything to do with it, and why is Searcher the only one getting credit for it? Given what we are shown of Searcher early in the movie, am I really to believe that this guy would have found his way off that mountain without Callisto leading him? If they're going to honor Jaeger Clade, they might as well honor the whole expedition team. It's only fair. In case you're wondering, they do show a before and after image of the town square, and there's no statue before the expedition. That means both statues went up after the expedition. And if I'm being honest, it's giving me Kim Dynasty vibes, if you know what I mean. Hey guys, gotta stop the video for a second, because I just realized something while I was editing this part. In the wide shot, you can see 6 statues, and I'm going to take a wild guess and say that that's the expedition team, but there was only 5 of them, so I don't know who the 6th person is. That could be the former president of Abylonia, I don't know. This is just me guessing because they don't zoom in on any of the other statues, but the one beside Clade does kind of look like Callisto, and that's what has me speculating who the other statues could be. However, this woman has a dog with her, and we don't see Callisto with a dog at all in the movie. Just wanted to point that out. Now on to another scene that pisses me off. Searcher has abandonment issues and is resentful towards his father. Can't really blame him for that. However, we're only shown that one incident, and that's the only incident that Searcher talks about, which I find hypocritical since Jaeger saved his life in that very same scene. Jaeger saved Searcher multiple times, and not once does Searcher ever thank him. Jaeger doesn't yell at his son for endangering the lives of the expedition team, even though it was definitely his fault. The other reason I hate this scene is because this is the first time that Ethan is verbally expressing what he wants. He wants to know about his grandfather, and from what we're hearing, this isn't his first time asking, but Searcher is purposely denying him that. When he finally does cave and talk about his father, he paints him in a very negative light, and I'll bet money he's doing that on purpose. Probably to make Ethan stop asking and to make sure that he doesn't idolize his grandfather in any way. Here's something I want to know. Where's the grandmother in all this? What's her opinion? I get that she wouldn't want to overstep when it comes to her son's parenting, but that was her husband. I'm not trying to justify what Jaeger did. Him walking out on his family was a shitty thing to do. He let his pride get in the way of doing what was best for his son and his team. But because he did that one bad thing, does that negate all that he's accomplished? By the way, what has this guy accomplished? Seriously, I have no clue what he has contributed to his community. At the very least, I would think that him going on these expeditions did financially support his family. Because you do have to be hired for this particular job. If you have money, I guess you could do it yourself. I like Callisto. I think she's a solid character until the climax, and then they fucked her up with the old bait and switch. I find it interesting that Searcher never mentioned knowing her. Was he just so traumatized by his father leaving him that he chose to distance himself from everything associated with his father? Does that include his mother? I do find it concerning that he chose not to mention this to his wife, as if it's this great shame that he doesn't want her to know about, but they do know because he's celebrated for bringing back the plant. I don't know why he's not sharing this information, or at least the positive stuff. I'm not married, but I would think that if you withhold information from your partner and they discover it through someone else, it could lead to some trust issues. Searcher was 15 when he returned with a plan, and the thing about human nature is people like to capitalize on innovative products, and given all the machinery that we're seeing that runs on the plant, it's safe to say that companies benefited big time. However, because Searcher was so young, I wonder what prevented these companies from taking advantage of him. His mother does come to mind, but I feel that Callisto would have had the biggest hand in protecting Searcher and making sure that he too could benefit from his own discovery. From what we see throughout the film, Searcher isn't shown having any animosity towards Callisto, so that makes me think that they parted ways on a positive note, so why doesn't he talk about her? I need to mention this. This looks to be a barn, and this guy kept his old Explorer equipment under a sheet, and at no point did Ethan stumble across it throughout his childhood and maybe started playing with it. Also, 25 years is a long time, and if you don't take care of your things and just store it in a barn, its durability is going to erode away. Just because it's stored in a barn doesn't mean it's 100% shielded from the elements. When they go down the crater, Meridian followed them for 4 hours. I find that a little hard to believe because we saw an hour's work, maybe 2, I'm guessing, drain the pods she was using. Not to mention, she was working at overtime when they started to crash land. What happens next? I feel they did completely out of order. They did the big reveal too soon in my opinion, and the way they wrote it comes off as if they couldn't be bothered. Now let's talk about Ethan again. The apple does not fall far from the tree. Ethan stowed away and brought his dog with him. I don't know how the hell he kept his dog quiet for 4 hours or more. When they're attacked, Searcher has to rescue the dog, which results in him falling off the ship. After they crash land, their first priority is to get the ship running again because without that, they're stranded. But Ethan immediately wants to start searching for his father, which is understandable. However, the way he tries to convince Callisto to prioritize his father is by talking down about his father instead of admitting that it was his fault because it was his fault. Like father, like son. I love that it's Callisto, who hasn't seen Searcher in so many years, that has to defend him to his child. And not even his wife says anything. When Ethan sneaks off to look for his dad because he thinks his father is useless, I find it comical that he starts fantasizing flirting with his crush, all while being so torn up about his father. When Searcher and Jaeger are reunited, we see that Jaeger has a makeshift flamethrower, but again, how the does it work? We don't see him having to repair or refuel it, so how? Given the messaging of this film, I'm guessing that this was added specifically to virtue signal people bad, fire destructive, nature good, that kind of crap. And yet, there are situations where the flamethrower genuinely saves their lives, so I don't know what kind of message they're trying to tell with this. Now let's talk about the reunion. First of all, this is a shit take.
Searcher? This is incredible!
I was thinking the same.
Oh. Yeah.
I don't care that this is an animation. I don't care what the history between these two characters are. There is no other way they should have responded than with a hug, unless the parent was abusive. And the way Searcher talks about his father, you'd think he was. Which begs the question, why did he try to instigate a hug? This is a Disney film. Where the hell are the emotions? The reason Disney films were so popular was because of the emotions the characters portrayed. That's the whole reason why Disney started making films in the first place. Walt Disney wanted to see if he could make people cry with animation. I felt nothing when watching this except for annoyance. The conversation between Searcher and his father paints them both in a very negative light. They constantly talk down to each other, Searcher more than Jaeger. Jaeger scoffs at his son's profession instead of just being happy to see his son and know that he's doing well. As for Searcher, how else is anyone supposed to interpret this?
Your mom has a lot of explaining to do.
She's gone, Dad.
Penelope's dead.
Dead? No, she's not dead. She's 60 and works out 5 days a week. I said she was gone, as in moved on. With Sheldon.
I swear he said this on purpose to hurt his father, and I feel that it is confirmed since Jaeger doesn't even know who Sheldon is. Why bring up a stranger's name unless you're trying to hurt someone by mentioning their name? Which only makes Searcher come off worse. At least with Jaeger, he didn't necessarily intend to abandon his family. The whole point of the expedition was to find out what was on the other side of the mountains and if it could benefit Apollonia. The narration made that clear.
Believing the key to their future lies beyond these mountains, many have tried to get past them.
The whole thing with Splat makes no sense. He's some kind of scout whose job I suspect is to make sure that things are running accordingly and that nothing is interfering with the well-being of the ecosystem that he is quite literally a part of. Truth is, I don't even know why this creature even bothered with Ethan. I know it's because the writers put it in there, but what I don't understand is why show Splat being aggressive towards Searcher first, who didn't do anything to him, unlike Ethan, who was very aggressive when Splat wasn't. At least I don't think he was. Not only that, but the incident with the pods. I think that should have been confirmation to this creature that Ethan's species may be part of the problem that's happening down there. But what really gets me is when Splat directs Ethan to use the pods on essentially his own kind, knowing how much it hurts. This movie is really coming off as if everyone sucks. Also, I'd like to point out that Jaeger knows what Splat's directive is, probably because he's had encounters with at least the red one, and yet Jaeger never mentions this to the others except for Searcher, who never mentions it either, which is convenient so that Splat can tag along. This this is seriously coming off as amateur writing. This is something that's been annoying me. They couldn't take 5 seconds for Jaeger and Callisto to get reacquainted, or at the very least have them acknowledge that they recognize each other. Callisto does recognize him, but as for Jaeger, at no point does he acknowledge that he remembers Callisto. When Meridian asked Callisto to push the vehicle, all that would have needed to happen was Jaeger turn his head and say Callisto's name the way she did to him.
Okay, so they're smarter than they look.
I could have told you that.
Wait, Jaeger Clade?
The one
We know!
Guys?
I want to address this real quick. Jaeger's been talking about Searcher's plan, and while Searcher does defend his plan, he doesn't give examples on how the plan is being used. I feel that all Searcher would have had to say to shut his father up was to tell him that the ship Jaeger wants to use to get him to the other side of the mountains is powered by Pando. That would have been an instant mic drop. I don't like this scene. It doesn't piss me off like others have, but it's not good. Instead of this being a moment for Jaeger and Ethan to genuinely bond, it's used as a tutorial of the do's and don'ts on relationships. We're halfway through the film now, and spoiler, they give away the entire plot.
The objective is to live harmoniously with your environment. For the 27th time, there are no bad guys. You're just supposed to build a working civilization utilizing the environment around you.
And no bad guys? What kind of game has no bad guys?
That's just poor storytelling.
I honestly didn't care just because I particularly wasn't invested. For those, however, that were genuinely watching this film, I feel sorry for them, because this comes off to me that the writers and producers of this film don't care or respect their audience. If anything, people get more respect from creators that review movies. At least they give you a heads up before giving away any major spoilers, because they clearly don't want to ruin the experience of watching the film. That's why you hear everyone, including myself, always saying, spoiler alert. Now here you gotta be me with this one.
Wow.
Who taught you how to throw?
Sheldon?
You're telling me that this 40-year-old man can't throw. Does that mean he never played catch with his own son? Am I really to believe that at no point in Searcher's life did he ever throw anything, especially given his upbringing? Searcher wasn't 7 or 10 when his father left. He was 15. I know this is probably coming off that Jaeger was neglectful, but the way I'm seeing this is that what Searcher can't do is probably because Jaeger did it all for him. I get why they put this in. They wanted that classic father-son bonding moment, but it just falls flat for me.
Why farming?
I love being outside and being my own boss. And I like that I can pour my heart and soul into what I'm growing. You know, to make sure it becomes exactly what I need it to be. Something strong that lasts. A legacy that my son can be proud of.
You want to know why I didn't try harder to come home?
Well, the thought did cross my mind.
It's because I'm stuck.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, different kind of stuck. You see, I've been an explorer my whole life. That's all I've ever known. Even though it cost me everything. If I gave up on it, what would I be? Who would I be?
I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about the dialogue that isn't setting right with me. The wording feels off. Overall, it's a pretty decent scene, and yet I'm not completely satisfied with it. Ethan is probably the most uninteresting character in this entire movie, and when Meridian says this...
I gotta say, Ethan, I've never seen you so happy as you are down here.
I guess, the farm is so small. The world is so big. I just feel like I'm in my element. I don't know.
I'm wondering if I missed part of the movie. There is no point in this movie where Ethan expresses that he was not happy on the farm. His father kinda scolds him for not weeding some fields, and Ethan frowns when he still has to do it, but that's not really letting us know anything about him except for maybe he's a little lazy. Another incident where Ethan gets upset is he misses out on buying cards, but he doesn't blame his father or the farm, and in the end he gets the cards anyway. The only time we see him visually upset is when Searcher tells him he's not going on the expedition. But what gave Ethan the thought that he would be going in the first place?
Yes! When do we head out?
Whoa, hold up. You're not coming with me.
But we do everything together.
Not this.
Then what's the point of you showing me how to grow Pando my whole life?
So you can take over the farm.
But this is so much more important.
No.
But Dad!
I will not risk your life.
This confirms to me that Ethan was content with his life on the farm and the expectation of continuing the family business. Because the mission involved Pando, his family's livelihood, that would give him a sense of obligation to be part of the mission. Everything Ethan does is motivated by Pando until they reach the underground, where Ethan kind of becomes a blank slate in my opinion. I have no idea what they're trying to say here.
Our plant's not sick.
It's at war.
Well, let's even the odds.
Easier said than done.
We have Pando.
You know how much Pando that would take?
You got a better idea?
Yeah, we abandon this lost cause and fly to the other side of the mountain.
Yeager's dialogue makes no f***ing sense. This man has intentionally refused to learn anything about Pando. In fact, I think this is the first time that he's actually said the plant's name. Not to mention, it's made clear Yeager likes to have a more hands-on approach when doing anything, so I would think he'd welcome this challenge, but instead, he wants to turn tail and run, which is more Searcher's MO. This next scene, I think's helped clarify some things.
It just doesn't feel right to me. I don't want to kill all these creatures.
Well, don't think of it as killing. We're just exterminating some pests, trying to destroy our crops.
Oh, okay. Ethan is a sensitive one, and they only chose to show it now, right before the climax. Great timing. I think this line here is more accurate than what the writers probably intended.
I'm not a farmer, Dad.
Ethan, where's all this coming from? This doesn't sound like you.
We're even shown that Ethan does prioritize Pando over finding his father, even though that's why he's out there in the first place. Not to mention, what part of this world has he explored? The only time he was really exploring was when he was supposed to be looking for his father and immediately he screwed up, which isn't a bad thing. But when he was thrown a bone, when Splat showed up and became his guide, even though he was trying to guide him to his death, the rest of the time he's on the ship away from the world he claims he's exploring. At that point, it's more of a safari ride.
But it is me, Dad. This is probably the most me I've ever been. I feel like I'm in my element when I'm exploring this world.
Again, when did Ethan insinuate he wanted more than what he already had? They love using this word so damn much.
Is our legacy?
I created a real legacy.
A legacy that my son can be proud of. I just wanted so badly to build you a legacy you could be proud of.
This was supposed to be our legacy.
You want to talk about legacy?
Best legacy we can leave. I'll do my best to live up to your legacy.
And I'm just gonna say it, I think it's a little shitty that Searcher and Ethan discover what's on the other side of the mountains without Yeager. I get why they wrote it that way, and it makes perfect sense. Yeager's been obsessing over the mountains for over 25 years, and when he finally gets a chance to conquer it, he chooses to go back and help his son. However, the way the story played out in preparation for this was just distasteful in my opinion. Here's another scene that pisses me off. When it's revealed what's on the other side of the mountains, Yeager leaves to see it for himself, and honestly, I don't know why Callisto didn't do the same, if only to confirm Searcher was telling the truth. Anyway, Searcher asks his father to help him, but really, it kinda comes off as if he's demanding it. Which comes off entitled because he was literally yelling at his father and accusing him of things just 5 minutes ago in the film, and he didn't apologize for it afterwards.
You want to be an explorer?
Hey, is everything all right?
Is this because of him?
What?
It is, isn't it?
No.
What did you say to Ethan?
I didn't say anything.
Dad, it's not Grandpa's fault.
Are you trying to brainwash my son?
Brainwash?
Ethan, will you trust me? You do not want to be like him. The only thing he cares about is himself and conquering those mountains.
This man essentially destroys both his relationship with his son and the little he had with his father in this one scene, but only apologizes to his son but not his father, who he verbally attacked, for just trying to help.
Where are you going?
To the other side of the mountains. I'm gonna see this for myself.
I need your help. Dude.
Oh, right. Because I'm a horrible father.
Yeah, but you didn't have to be.
F*** off. Your father doesn't owe you shit, and you don't owe your father anything. Surprise, surprise, Callisto is the final boss villain, not really. I find it comical that Meridian tells this woman not to put her hands on her, but she doesn't say anything about her son.
Callisto?
Dad?
Get your hands off me.
You know what comes to mind when watching this? The Last Unicorn. For those who haven't seen it, there's this scene where this young wizard, Skamedric, attempts to break Amathea out of her cage, and he goes through all these different spells that don't work, and finally he pulls out the keys out of his pocket and uses those instead. Despite all the b***ing I'm doing about this movie, I did like this.
You can do it. You can do it.
Can you not yell at my dog?
Well, I wouldn't yell if you were actually trained.
He is trained. He hasn't been in the house for the last 2 days.
I've been on this ship for the last 2 days.
I didn't realize how much I didn't like this character until I rewatched this. I feel like this character is an insert on how Disney views its audience.
Meridian, open this door.
Don't worry, President Maul. I got this.
Wait here.
And now I'm getting Avatar vibes. I have no issue with how the rest plays out except for when Jaeger destroys his flamethrower. Clearly that was symbolism for Jaeger shedding his destructive, ignorant ways, but they could have used that to soften the material, making it easier to dig through. That would have been the better message. Fire is destructive, but when used in moderation, it's warmth, it's comfort, it's convenient. Like all things, too much of anything is bad, but in moderation, it's fine, except for drugs. With that said, there is a definite missed opportunity when using Pando. Throughout the movie, we see Pando being used excessively for every little mundane thing, but it's seen as a positive to the people using the plant. However, in the subterranean world, Pando is purposely used negatively every single time to hurt the creatures there. This could have been the opportunity to use Pando one final time in a non-violent, selfish way. Instead of standing around feeling sorry, they could have used the electricity to jumpstart the heart, showing their determination to do everything within their power to correct their mistake, maybe even making a sacrifice, specifically their ship, despite whether they knew if it would work or not. The reason I say this is because just giving up Pando isn't enough. Since they verbally established that they are piggybacking off this creature's existence, it's common sense at that point that they need to save it, if only for their own survival, meaning their motivation is self-interest. But by sacrificing their main transportation and possibly marooning themselves, that shows a level of sacrifice that isn't self-centered. That's kind of the whole point of sacrifice. It's not supposed to be beneficial. Now onto the aftermath. How the hell are they floating? In the beginning, we only see the vehicles floating when they're in use. The only exception is Meridian's plane, but I think they purposely ignored it because they thought this would be a fun scene. If they had shown the people of Abylonia reestablishing power first before this, I don't think I would have heavily questioned it as much as I am now. I think that's one of the biggest things this movie suffers from, is the order in which the scenes happen. I think that's about all that I wanted to address. I'm going to be honest, I personally don't think this is a good movie. There was nothing interesting about the characters, the story, or even the setting that caught my attention. The characters felt two-dimensional, and what little personality was given wasn't all that likable. Searcher was a character I liked the least, and he was the main protagonist. I gotta say that the underground world that was created for this movie, for whatever reason I can't explain, reminded me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. I don't understand it either. As pretty as this world was, to me there was nothing special about it, and I think part of the reason I felt that way was because we didn't get to explore it. The characters were on the ground for a little over 20 minutes, and for the remainder of the time they were on the ship. The crews, in my opinion, better showed a world that the characters were estranged from and how they were forced to interact with it. There are other examples of movies that did the exploration theme better, such as Atlantis, Treasure Planet, and Tie-In AE. All three films has the characters traveling on ships, and two of those movies are Disney films. What's even more ironic is that all three protagonists that are males have daddy issues. Not so much Milo, but he did have male figures in his life that did give off dad vibes, such as Whitmore and Rourke. Despite the journey to the destination, I appreciate the messaging on how we need to be more mindful to our environment and what we're doing to it. I appreciate it being shown, the vines being cleared out, making sure that there's no chance of Pando growing back. There are other environmental movies that I think does the messaging better without pressing your face against it, such as Ferngully, Wall-E, The Lorax, and my personal favorite, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. That's where I believe the movie fell tremendously at. It didn't have faith in its own story to keep the audience engaged, and that's why I believe the ending was spoiled halfway through. There are movies that have done this, but oftentimes it's done with a purpose. Here, there was no need for it because the film explains the plot 2 more times back to back after the initial spoiler.
The objective of Primal Outpost is to live harmoniously with your environment.
So, all this time, we've been living on the back of this giant creature?
Yeah, and Pando is killing it.
Okay, listen. This place, this world that we live on, is a living thing, and Pando is killing it. If we want to survive, Pando has to go.
This is not Disney's best. Is it its worst? That's up for debate. Without a doubt, Disney will always be on top when it comes to graphics, but that can only keep people's attention for so long before they start seeking entertainment elsewhere with more engaging stories. Truthfully, the only reason I watched this movie was because reviewers criticized the hell out of the film and the article with the infamous line, "Even the dog's disabled." Newsflash, this isn't the first movie to do this. Ever heard of a little thing called Full Metal Alchemist? Even Jennifer Lopez was in a movie where she had a disabled dog. But did they market the film film around that. Do I believe the poor performance of this film will be a wake-up call for Disney? Absolutely not. They do what they want to do, and we decide for ourselves if we want to watch their films. No company is perfect. There will always be hits and misses, and we decide if the movie was a success or not to us. With that said, if you like the movie, more power to you. I'm glad someone enjoyed it. That will be all. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this video and the movie, and like and subscribe.